we're going to look at linear modeling, and there's a couple big ideas with linear modeling. The first is finding what the variables represent and finding how it's changing. So one thing we'll talk about is a constant rate, something that keeps changing after each second or time interval. That's going to be referred to as our slope. And the other part is going to be where we start at. So sometimes they call it an initial amount, a fixed rate. All those are the Y-intercept. So if you want to put that on your paper, the Y-intercept could be like an initial amount, could be a starting value, but it's the point where it touches the y-axis. So a lot of times if we're talking about time, it's when time is 0. Now we're going to look at a couple examples. One's going to use the slope-intercept and one's going to use the point-slope form. So for the first one, Dia was driving away from New York City. Constant speed of 58. I'm going to know right now that that's going to be my slope. And he started 45 miles away. That's his starting value. That's going to be what the y-intercept is. Now, they are specific about using variables and what those variables represent. So in A, it says they want us to write a function. D is the distance and H is the hours. So D is our y value. That depends on the hours. So H will be our x value in this case. And we're going to have 58 miles per hour. And because this is 58 miles per hour, this is going to be 58h. And we started 45 miles away. So that's going to be my y-intercept. So I could use this in the calculator by putting y and x. And then for part B, generally they're asking you questions based on an equation that you create. So Dia's destination is 270 miles away from New York City. They're asking us to figure out to the nearest tenth of an hour how long it will take her. So I know right now that my answer has to be something in hours. So I'm going to write that down at the bottom underneath the question. Now, 270 is miles, which is a distance. So I'm going to have to solve this equation and see when it equals 270, which value of h does that for me. So I got a two-step equation. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 45 on each side. And then I have 225 equals 58h, and I got to divide by 58. So I'm going to take my calculator, type that in. 225 divided by 58, it says nearest tenth. So in this case, it's going to be 3.9 hours. It was 3.87, but I got to round up the 8 because of the 7 past it. So there's a basic example for slope-intercept. Now we're going to do one based on point-slope. That would be exercise 2 below. And they talk about a cell phone plan. It says that she has a fixed cost per month, and she gets charged 15 cents per call. So I know right now that 15 cents per call, that's what's changing each time, so that's going to be our slope. And it says in her last month's bill, she was charged $12.80 for 52 calls. So we got a charge amount, and we got an amount of calls that we're going to use for this question. And they want us to do a point-slope form model. P for our pay, and the calls are going to be C. So the P will be our Y value. So I'm writing that point slope form, but I'm going ahead and I'm switching up my Y and X's to P and C. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in numbers that I have. So I got P minus, and P is the pay. So that's how much she got charged. So it's going to be P minus $12.80. M is the charge, the slope for a call. So in this case, she got charged 15 cents per call. And then it's C minus, which C is the number of phone calls, and it said she made 52 calls. So now what I have to do is, for this part, I'm all set. this is my equation in point slope, but B asks for the fixed cost. And the fixed cost, again, is going to be your y-intercept. So how much would she have to pay for making 0 phone calls, like they say in here? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take that equation that I just wrote down, and I'm going to solve for P first by distributing. So I got 0.15C, and then I'm going to take my calculator back out. I'm going to put 0.15 times negative 52, which is negative 7.8. So this will be minus 7.8. And then I got my P minus my 1280, and I'm going to add 1280 to both sides. So P is going to equal 0.15C plus 5. So the charge, the fixed cost for making 0 phone calls would be $5. Now we're going to look at one other question. Exercise 3. This one has a graph that we're going to make a sketch for. So it looks like right here they want us to use the graphic calculator to sketch and label each of these functions from 0 to 500. So that means that here's W, so I'm going to have 0. I'm going to put 500 over here. I'm not going to put anything on the y-axis right now because I don't know how high or low the numbers are going to be. But I'm going to go ahead and try to do, I know it's linear, so I'm going to go ahead and go to y equals. So I'm going to type in that first one. So we got 0.18x plus 20.64. And then I'm going to go to my calculator. I want to get the 0 value first. So I know I have 0 and 20.64. Then I'm going to press second in window, and I'm going to put my table up to 500. And then I want to see what that value is. So at 500, I have $110.64. So I got those 2 points for my first equation. Now, it looks like I got another equation, R equals 0.26. That's the revenue I get. So that means I get 26 cents per widget. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out my first one, throw my second one in. Now at 500, I get 130. And I'm going to go back now to 0. And 0 is 0. So my first equation, I'm going to do this one. I'll do this one in green. I got 2 points. I got 0 and $20.64, and then I have 500 and 110.64. So I have to get up to 130. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start by putting in my 0 and 20.64. That's just going to be an estimate. I'll put it right about there. Then I have 500 and then a 110, so it's going to be less than that. So it's going to be somewhere in here. And I'm going to draw in that straight line. Try to make it as straight as I can. Now the other one I'm going to put in blue. So I have 0, 0, which is the corner. And then it says 500 and 130. So 500 and 130 be about there. And what's going to happen is these are going to cross at some point. Now they want us to use the intersect command for part B, and we can do that. So I got that first one in. I'm going to go ahead and type in
please report to Mr. Hogel's office. Mr. Schober to Mr.
the second one.
Preoccupation.
So we're going to go ahead and actually do this one algebraically. We'll go ahead and set this equal to each other. So I'm going to subtract the 0.18 W on each side. Then I have $20.64 equals 0.08W, and then I can divide each side by 0.08. So I'm going to type that in the calculator right now. So I got 20.64 divided by 0.08. So in this case right now, W would equal 258. So some point here near the middle, at 258, we're going to end up with the same amount, that intersecting point. And I can figure out what the Y value is. I know it's 258 for the amount of widgets. And if I do 258, or sorry, 0.26 times 258, that'll give me the Y value, which is $67.08. So you can find out on each of these questions where they intersect by just setting them equal to each other. And also make sure when you're doing the modeling, like we talked about in the other questions, make sure you understand whether the rate of change is the slope and those initial amounts are fixed costs, which would be the y-intercepts.